Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So let's wait a couple of minutes so that we have more people joining, and then we'll get started.
Hello.
Hello, Sergi. So let's wait a few seconds, and then we'll get started. All right. So welcome everyone to this new Che community call. So I think that you should see my screen, the Google Doc with the topics. So we have released the Che 748 last week, and the next release will be 749 in a couple of weeks. And basically, I think that that's it for the releases, and there is no upcoming or past event. And so let's get started right away with the first topic. So Anatoly, you had the first topic.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Oh, okay, fine. So yeah, we have the issue with customer source creation. So basically, everything was fine when Eclipse is deployed from GSTL. But when it comes to OpenShift UI, it goes in a slightly different way. So the workflow is the following. We install Eclipse Share using OpenShift UI. It's installed in OpenShift operators namespace. And when it comes to custom resource creation, OpenShift UI suggests to create the custom resource in the very same namespace. It's actually OpenShift operators. And it's not what we would like, because in general all operands should go in a different namespace, right? And there is a problem how we can how can we achieve that, right? Because customer source is created by a user. We don't control this thing. And I have a doubt if basically if we can do anything here. So from what you, Mario, suggested is that Eclipse operator must create some default custom resource, and then all operands will go in different namespace like Eclipse. Is it correct?
Yeah. Yes, correct. Yes, correct. So the idea would be that the operator, when it started, it looks for one customer source of type Che cluster. If there is no Che cluster customer source, it creates the Eclipse Che namespace and add there a default Che cluster, and yeah, basically that's basically it.
But what if a user want to configure something in Che cluster?
He will do that later. He will be able to do that later. So it will have the default configuration, and if you want to change something, you will have the opportunity to do that later. It doesn't really change much. It's just, and most of the time it should be fine with the, so at least for the first time that he install, he should be fine, and then he can iteratively try to change things on Che cluster customer source. But I think that this is really much better than even like the first time you deploy Che, you need to go through 2 steps. Like one, you install the operator, and then you need to go do a second step, creating a Che cluster. And you don't know why you need to do those 2, because actually you just want to have Che, and you don't know exactly what you need to change in the configuration. So most of the time it's like that. You just want the default one. So it's just really a matter of trying to make the thing simple for the most used use case, the most common use case. The most common use case is I just want the default. Then there is a particular use case when you want some particular configuration, and then here you don't really make it more difficult, because it's still a 2 steps. A two steps operation. So you need to deploy the operator, to subscribe to operator, and then second step is configuring the Che cluster. So it doesn't really change much. It's from my point of view, it's really just a benefit for administrators.
I think if we go in this way, we have to update all documentation. Key has to adopt their workflows, and yeah, a lot of changes will come to CCTL as well and to Chiperator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for documentation, at least that's where everything started, is because today it's so complicated. So to describe the installation, because you need to explain that, and it makes things super simple. So it's just subscribe to the operator, and that's it. And then you have in Eclipse Che namespace, you have the Che that is installed. So it's really simplified that. For QE, yes, let's discuss that. But I discussed with Dimitro earlier today, and they agree that that's like makes things work better. So
yeah, I see. Okay, but I would like to start working on this issue once pull request with Che cluster API version 2 is meshed.
Yeah. So yeah.
A lot of changes.
Absolutely. And to be clear, it's something that we didn't wanted for Dev Spaces 3.0. So at least what I said is that we're not able to have that for Dev Spaces 3.0. So that's something that will come later, but so we'll document that as a known issue for now, for the next for the 3.0 and probably for 3.1. So that's something that we can target for 3.2. So yeah.
Okay,
does that
I see.
Make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And the OpenShift GitOps operator does exactly that. That it when you subscribe, it automatically create the namespace and create a customer source there, and then reconcile all the objects. So creates all the resources required in that namespace.
Yeah, but I see some issues here. For instance, operator is deployed, it creates such a cluster customer source by itself, and then user tries to create another one customer source from OpenShift UI, because API is there. So, and it leads to problem for each operator. It will find two custom resources.
Yes,
so
exactly.
We need to think how to handle this.
But that's a problem. So if you test with OpenShift GitOps, I think that when the operator is installed, they are not directed to the page where you can create custom resources. So and that's a problem that we have already today. So today a user can create two custom resources, and that's problematic also. So yeah, I don't. But anyway, yeah, I think that we'll see. Probably there will be other problems, and we'll find them. But I think that since there are other operators that are using this approach, I think we should go that way as well.
Okay. If you have any question, we can discuss that offline later. Okay,
Yes.
I get it. Yeah. Thank you. That's it from my side.
Any question for Anatoly or any comment on this new approach? Okay, so let's move to the second topic. Those are actually two presentations from Sergi and Max. So I will stop sharing if you're okay, Sergi and Max.
Yeah, sure.
So that you should be able to share and to do the presentation.
Yeah, so that's two topics, as you Mara mentioned, about namespace creation and provisioning, and the second topic about authentication authorization, which was prepared by Michal. So most work made by him, but unfortunately he was not able to join. I think maybe Maxim, we can start with you here.
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Let me just a second to share screen. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm okay. Make it full screen. So yeah, my today's presentation is about namespace operations. What do we have? We have three main operations. First one is getting the list of the available namespaces to provision chain to them. It has nothing to do with provision itself, but it can be useful, for example, for dashboard to show user the options where he can install chair or something like that. Second stage is provision, which is done on chair server side, and third stage is provision of which is done of chair. In fact, it's first stage done by chair server and second stage done by chair operator. So about the getting namespace list, which is available for creation, here is also couple of options. So the first option is try to find namespaces which are maybe prepared by, I don't know, cluster admin or chair admin or whatever to use the as a user workspaces there. So to prepare them, admin should put correct labels and correct annotations on that namespaces, and we will find them and then provision chairs there. So if you're talking about the getting list, it just will be returned as a options list. Second step, if there is no prepared namespaces, we then look into user preferences. We try to find namespace names there because user may be using somehow earlier, and he may want to reuse his namespace in the new architecture with chair operator. So we look into the preferences, and if we didn't find anything in the preferences, there is like default behavior, which is we just found configured template, which is usually it's username chair, and use it as a variable namespace. So that's a process of detecting the variable list. If we go into the stage,
Sorry, Max. How would you prefer to handle that? Because you jump from slide to slide. Would you mind, like, if you present everything and then we ask questions, or should we ask questions as we go?
as you wish, let's go with questions step by step.
Okay, so for me, the question is, what exactly is user preference here? I just get a little bit lost. Because with labels, it's pretty clear. So we have it documented. So the cluster admin creates the labels, and then the namespaces are created, right? But what are the user preferences here?
That's probably for the step when we did the migration from database-based chair into operator-based chair. So when it was database-based chair, we have user preferences stored somewhere. Right now, if I remember correctly, they're stored where, Sergey? Did you remember exactly?
Maxim, like, so the preferences used to store the configuration, what was on the moment of the namespace creation, and that's needed to, in case if admin changed the preference on the go, like let's say there was a username chair, already have 10 namespace created, and then he decided to change it to username CRW, something like that. So to make sure users will not lost existed namespaces with VIA Workspace, the namespace preferences is used. So that's a place to save the name of the already created namespace. So that was the main purpose of using preferences in namespace, like in the process of detecting the name of the user's namespace.
Yeah, but I think Ilya's question was more where is the preferences stored right now, where we can find them.
Preferences is stored in database.
Yeah.
But do we use them in the latest version? By any means?
Like,
I mean, I understand.
Do we use?
Yeah,
yes. How often it used by the main purpose by design? It's hard to me to say. I really doubt that someone admin, especially after you and Lukasz add a very explicit message on the preference that's very bad idea to change the pattern of username share on the go. So I doubt that it's used on purpose on this sport and to this concrete purpose. And I think at that time, I'm not sure, did we store the annotation, the username annotation? So maybe there was no step one as it is right now, like search by label annotation.
Just as a note, now we are renaming Code-Ready Workspaces to dev spaces. So when a user migrate an existing instance of Code-Ready Workspaces, then we change the default namespace name, and that means that property, so that preference will be used in that case, I guess, for the migration part.
Okay.
I just don't get it. But okay, you mean that if there is a pattern set like username -chair, so in the new version of the product it will be like not chair but something different, or not CRW, whatever, and then the check on the database kicks in and continue using this like old pattern for old namespaces? Because I just didn't get it, sorry.
That's my understanding, yes.
So after the migration, even if there is like a new prefix, the old namespaces will be used because there will be user preferences persisted in the database saying that, okay, now you need to still use old namespace. We know that this is used for workspace creation.
I'm not sure that's the good idea to rely on preference. I think the labels and annotation is more reliable, isn't it?
No, that's a lot much more reliable. But what you're saying is that the code today relies on the namespace preference in this use. So if I'm an administrator and I change the namespace default, the in Che cluster, the Che server property namespace default, then what you're saying is that instead of looking at the labels, you're going to look at the preferences in this case to avoid to create a new namespace for a user that already had one with the old name.
Not exactly. Like we are looking at a slide which is telling that that's a chain. So first step is label and annotation, and if they already exist, no matter what the pattern and no matter what the preference, I think that would be used.
Okay, yeah. And what is the in what circumstances the labels would not be there? So because Che adds labels, and if they are created automatically, so the namespace is created automatically, and if the namespace is created manually, pre-created by the administrator, he has to add labels. So the labels and annotation should always be there, right?
Like ideally, yes, but I would say there are multiple circumstances. For instance, I think like at dev clusters, they don't have those annotations and labels, and they use pattern. Am I right, Ilya?
Sorry, you mean developer sandbox?
Yes.
Well, we do use the pattern like this one. I'm just checking that. So currently we use this pattern, which is infra Kubernetes namespace default username dev. So it doesn't rely on the product name. So it will be still the same, you know, with the new version of the product. But there is an explicit preference that we have added recently, because previously we haven't got that one. Che infra Kubernetes namespace label true, and before we haven't got that one, so it was, you know, set to false, I think, and we haven't got the labels in place, but we enabled it some time ago. I think roughly like a month ago. So now we also label the namespaces. And I think Mario's question was why do we need this you know, Boolean flag chain for Kubernetes namespace label true or false? Because it looks like the labels should be always in place because it's like reliable way of doing that. But we currently have these flags that need to be set explicitly so that the labels would be set on the namespace level.
I'm not sure like 400%, but as far as I remember, not all clusters allow labeling namespaces. I may be wrong, but I think that's the case.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if we didn't have the privilege to do that, maybe that's
Yeah.
the.
But on
Yeah.
Sandbox, it's possible to do. It's possible to label the namespaces as we as we want.
Yeah, I remember like like a long time ago there was like some difficulties with labeling an annotation, which requires some extra privilege for Chess-Serverless account. Or we used to create the namespaces on behalf of users service account, and it was not allowed for them. But at some point of time, we switched to use Chess-Server service account to create namespaces. Maybe that was the case why we add this property.
Yeah, so to summarize, it's the first time user creating a namespace. For example, he's using default template, something like username Che or username Dave. And yeah, when created, we will see that later. When it's created, it's already made properly labeled. So next time it just goes to the step 1 and fins 1, which is properly labeled and annotated, and use it for. So yeah, let's go to the Chess server creation stage, provision stage. It starts from exactly the same flow, which is described to find the appropriate namespace. It checks the Kubernetes namespace creation allowed flag. And if we don't have namespace and that creation allowed is not set, set to false, we will throw exception, of course, because we don't have any namespace and we can create it. Otherwise, that namespace is created and properly labeled with as I just mentioned before. So third step of that process is running namespace configurators. So there is an interface called namespace configurator, and there is like maybe 10 of implementations. Some of them are infrastructure specific, made specifically for OpenShift or for Kubernetes, and some of them are common, which configure security, service accounts, different kind of permissions, preferences, SSH keys, and stuff like that. So they all executed one by one. And that's it for the Chess server itself.
Sorry, Max, could you please go back to the previous slide? Yeah. What is the Che infra Kubernetes namespace annotate property?
Yeah, those both properties, namespace label and namespace annotate, it's which labels and annotations should be set to the newly created namespace. So if you just create it from scratch, you should set some annotate. Probably that's in theory it should be the same as we search, as we look for, right? To them to be found next time.
Because Che infra Kubernetes namespace label, I think it's a Boolean, right? So this one is just I think it is, because it's what we use on the sandbox. Che infra Kubernetes namespace label is just the flag if we need to label namespaces during the creation.
Let me check back.
Because there is labels like plural and singular. So the singular one is just a Boolean, right? The plurals probably you specify the labels so that we will be able to identify that this particular label is used for workspace. This particular namespace is used for workspace creation, right?
Yeah, maybe you're right. Probably there is them back in my presentation because I see there should be a list of annotations, but probably yes, this is also only Boolean values, which if true, then that use that multiple values from previous one, right? To annotation. To avoid
Yeah, and
like mistakes and different annotations.
right, but I haven't seen the second property, the chain for Kubernetes namespace annotate, because I'm not sure what exactly this one stands for.
Yeah, it's exactly the same like a label, whatever it should be annotated or not, I guess. At least I see it in HA properties. Yeah, it's there.
So, and
it's,
what for it this one is used?
It'll same like a labels, whatever you need to annotate namespaces.
Mm-hmm.
In singular, it's a Boolean. It's telling whatever you're doing, labeling or annotating. And in plural, that's exactly the labels or annotation that has to be add a value.
Okay, and which annotations do we use? Because I thought that we fall back on labels only.
Annotation, it's, I will paste in chat if I found it.
It's the same, but in plural form, right, Sergey?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think the question was more, what are annotations?
Why we use it, right? So because I understand for labels why we use it, but I don't understand for annotations.
So annotation is used because in theory, username can contain some characters that is not allowed to be a label. So that is why we search first by label and then iterating by over all items and checking annotation one by one. Because like a username can, in theory, contains something which we can put in label.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, probably this part is formulated not pretty much correct. I will fix that before leaving the presentation.
Just for my understanding, so I mean, since with annotation you are free to have also characters that are not allowed in labels, so you're putting like the name in the annotation, right? That's my understanding.
Yes. So labels are static thingy right now by default, and annotation is something something which is changing depends on the user.
Okay. And we could have used the annotation instead of fall back to annotation only if the characters are not valid ones. So we could have instead used annotation right away. So it's just my understanding, because it looks like then the algorithm for looking for the namespace of a user would have been simpler. So you filter by labels. You see, okay, these are Che namespaces, and then you look at the annotation for the. Maybe it's not good for performances. So just wondering.
That's exactly what we are doing right now.
And so it's because we don't just use annotation because it's better, because for performances point of view it's better to filter on labels.
No, let's once again. So we use both labels and annotations. We use annotation to store the username because in theory, we assume that the username may contain something which we can't put in a label. So right now, what we are doing when we're searching the namespace, we filter all namespaces by the label and then iterating over those namespaces what we found and compare the annotation with what we expect. Yes, with what we expect. That's my, as you said, that might be not the best performance, but that's a safer in terms of some very surprising characters and usernames.
Okay.
But like for OpenShift, I think that's not a problem. I guess the OpenShift usernames are all valid namespace, but that's my assumption. Yeah. Maxim?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's probably what we just described in graphical form. Let's switch to operator provisioning. So what operator does is provisioning of all kind of certificates like self-signed, trusted, or something like that. Provision of proxy settings if there is any, Git TLS certificates, and not selector and tolerations. Probably for self-sign and trust, it's just the process of copying the secrets from Che cluster namespace where the chain is installed into user namespaces, and just adding correct names and some annotations as well. And that's it. About proxy settings, they are read from Che cluster CR instance. So if there are any proxy settings, they are put into specific config map. About the Git certificates, they are stored in the config map, I believe, but it's kind of strange. I was expecting they store in the secret, but it's a config map, in fact. And also, it's like a secret, it's just copied into user namespace and just change name a little bit and get a proper annotations. And not selector and tolerations also copied from Che cluster. So it's just put in the specific annotations of the user namespace, and wherever the cluster is, it will apply it. That's what's done by Che operator, and that's probably it for provisioning process. Any questions on this step?
Yeah, I have a design question mainly. Why it was decided to spread it across two components, like Che operator and Che server? Because my understanding that on Che server side, we have like a couple of configurators. It could be a lot of configurators. I'm not sure, about a dozen, right? Why it's spread like between Che server when the bunch of configurators kicks in and do the namespace configuration, and then we do extra config on the operator.
Do you like me to answer?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So why it was in the the logic was the following: the thing which is exist in database are made by Che server, and all other things try as much as possible to do with operator to be more Kubernetes native. The only thing which very hard or not by design can be put in the Che operator is that HTTP endpoint, which is initiating creation of the namespace, because like a Che operator does not have that available. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the part with the Che operator not being able to catch the action when the, for example, user needs a new namespace, right? But at the same time, I'm not very clear with the database part, because so we have an issue about the database decommissioning already, right? This is something that we want to proceed with, and my main question is, to which extent at this point do we fall back on any data from the database that currently exists, right, for namespace provisioning? I understand that there is an edge case for migration where we could potentially find something in preferences that would allow us to identify the namespace that was, previously used for workspaces. But other than that, do we have anything else there?
Maxim, may I ask you to go back to the slide, then the namespace provisioning by chess server namespace configurators? Is there a list of them on some slide? Maybe the previous one?
No, there is no exact list because it's like sort of big.
SSH. I wouldn't say that big. It's like SSH keys, preferences, stuff like that. So it's more like copying the data what was in chess7 used to in the format which is needed for dev workspaces. And as you said, the share database should be decommissioned, and only the thing like native Kubernetes thing has to be used. So I would say those configurators are obsolete, which is in the chess server.
Okay, so my understanding that we can only use chess. So if we want to decommission the database, we can still use chess server for namespace provisioning and for reliable labeling and annotation mechanisms. But other configurators we can simply remove.
Sort of.
Because they're used for, for some pre-dev workspace operator setup, let's say.
Yeah, probably they should be reviewed because I believe not all of them works with database directly or reads something from there. For instance, this one which configures service account and stuff like that, they are kind of independent. But those ones which like read SSHK, for example, from your profile, that should be removed, of course.
Mm-hmm. So my understanding that in general, even if there are some bits that use database for namespace provisioning, they should be removed, right? Because they either ambiguous at some point, because we shouldn't probably get any info about what namespace to use for workspace creation from the database, right? From whatever preferences. We should fall back on labels and annotations or on the pattern. And yeah, if there are some edge cases, we can rework it, but if there are some configurators that use database, they should be removed. And in general, the vision is that namespace provisioning on chess server side should not fall back on database at any sense.
Yeah, sounds logical.
Okay.
Okay, that's probably it for my side. I will make the corrections, and then where is the best way? Where is the best place to put those slides, both about namespace and about the factory? and which is a place where everyone should know that he can find them there. Is it a decommissioning issue or something else? Any ideas?
I think like in the Chase server Git repository somehow you should probably have kind of like in the contributing MD. You may have a link to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So like looking at the time, we don't have a lot of time, so that remains. So maybe Sergi, the second topic is something that you may want to bring next week.
All right.
Would be that okay for you?
Yeah, that's okay. I may share this video in the mail so everybody can take a look and prepare some questions they have.
Okay, cool.
Right.
All right. Is there any other topic that somebody want to talk about, or questions for Max's presentation? And by the way, Max, thank you very much. This is helpful. I think that that brought a lot of discussion, questions, and better understanding of the work of so what's going on with the Chase server. So is there any question for Max? Yeah, there is a question from Tural Sadiq. So hello, Tural. So the question is if we have access to those PowerPoint. I think that that Max will make it available for everyone, and he will put the link on the. I think that the best way would be if you also send. So if you put it in the contributing markdown file in Chase server, it's good. But also if you send it to the mailing list, also would be really good. I think.
Okay, I will do after the final fixes. Okay.
Okay. So Tural, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. The same is for the previous meeting.
Sorry, maybe Tural, you were saying something.
Yes, sorry, the same thing I asked for the previous meeting. So again, I would like to have access to those slides if it's possible.
Yeah, for last week. Yeah, Max, that's I think again for you.
Yeah, sure. I will share them together.
Cool. Okay, thank you very much, and talk. So I think we can close the call here and talk to you next week. Bye bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, folks. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.